What was the most challenging thing for you as a director and actor in the same movie? How did you work that out?
Come on. It's always not the most efficient thing. For me, I felt very fortunate that I had this incredible group of actors and creative collaborators and people that I could trust. And I think it comes down to trust, honestly. And you talk about it, and you prep as much as possible, and you try to have a plan going in. But then at the end of the day, when you get there, it's about just having the environment there that you can create the moments with everybody, and you trust the actors. I need to trust the actors. They need to trust me because they know I'm directing, but I'm also acting in the scene with them, so they need to trust that I'm actually watching them as a director. But if I'm watching them as a director while I'm acting in the scene, then I'm not going to be a good actor. And that's already challenging. So it's it's just one of those things where you get into a rhythm and you figure out as you go along, and you were great, and all the actors were so great in supporting that process, and then you just hire really great talented people, because that really is a huge part of it. Just being hired the right actor, they're going to bring so much to it.
Actually, I do want to add something to that. You just saw this movie, and directing it alone looks like an incredibly impossible challenge, and just watching Ben do that and directing and being there as an actor and guiding everybody was really amazing to watch. I'm talking about him like he's not here. But it was really inspiring.
I think everybody got on board with it too. We all watched a few movies together and talked about what we felt the tone of the movie we wanted it to be, and then so that was important too. I came on relatively late in the process, but John and his dad really have had a long process of bringing the movie to the screen over many years. But basically, I think what happened was they tried for a long time to remake the original movie in some way, which didn't really in any way necessarily story-wise connect to the original short story. And at a certain point, Steve Conrad, maybe you guys can speak to how it happened, came in with a totally different take on the story. And when I read that script, for me, that was what made me want to do it, because it felt so emotionally connected and relevant, because it got into the idea of who this guy was and why he was a daydreamer, and didn't try to redo what had already been done very well by Danny Kaye. And obviously, I couldn't do that. Nobody would want to see me attempt to do that. So I didn't want to attempt to do that. So anyway, it was. So that was really what was exciting to me, was that Steve took this idea, and I think it has the spirit of the original story and the character that Thurber created, which is it's obviously an iconic character.
It's a gift for a writer to find a story that might have the promise of drawing us all together. And our imagination is one of those tools that we all use privately to move our lives forward, or to help deal with challenges, pain, and loss. But to have the chance to be able to write about one of our most magnificent faculties, I couldn't let pass me by. And I was given great space by the rest of our filmmakers to experiment with it, that I'm grateful for. I think it probably collectively it made a difference in this script being one that we were able to film.
One of the facets of Steve's script right off the bat was the idea that the fantasies in Walter's head related to parts of himself, who he could be or who he wanted to be, as opposed to being a different character, just elements of who Walter was under the surface that hadn't been realized. And obviously want to have fun with it and enjoy the idea of being able to be in different worlds, and for the comedy to come out of it. But for me, that idea of understanding how each fantasy leads him to becoming who he is, and ultimately being able to realize his full self, that was really important. The challenge with it, which we found, and I guess it was in the first time around, you talked about this, John, when they were making the first movie, is that when you have fantasies that stop the story, an audience naturally wants to see the story unfold. So it's very challenging to keep the momentum going and to have the fantasies play out. So originally, we had envisioned these much more elaborate fantasies that went on a lot longer. And as we developed the script and worked on the script, we realized that we had to keep on carrying them down. And that process sort of continued through the editing of the movie and finding that balance of how you could keep the momentum of the story going, but also having enough of the fantasies in there to give you a sense of what was going on inside Walter and just have fun. But we spent a lot of time, Jeff, Mann, and I, and the whole team envisioning all these crazy fantasies that we ended up having to cut both for budgetary reasons. There was originally there was a fantasy that happened on 6th Avenue when Walter and Cheryl were sitting by the fountain where he had this Lawrence of Arabia fantasy where Ted and all of the guys who work for Ted come galloping up on horses looking like Anthony Quinn, and they grab Cheryl and they ride the horses down into the subway, and they go through the subway, they come out the other side, and they're in in the desert, and then they end up like doing they end up singing the end song from Grease, right? I don't know why we cut that. But it was money, basically. But that, we just realized as we went along we had to keep on paring it down. And then the other thing we learned in working on the story was it was very important to focus on Cheryl and Walter and the connection that they had together, because there's very little time in the story to develop that relationship before Walter goes out into the world. And so it really became important to focus the fantasies on Walter and Cheryl, and Walter wanting to connect with Cheryl. And so we kept on working on that all the way through the process of making the movie.
Big departure in Dan and Steve's version of the movie from the old Danny Kaine, even Thurber, is that right from the beginning, there's something about the man's yearning that's revealed in the fantasies. Whereas in Thurber and even in the old Danny Kaine movie, it's about retreat. So you get the sense of a man who really wants to figure out a way to make a connection in Steve's version of the movie in a way that you've never felt in any former iteration of the story.
It's such a weird thing because I think you can't really define it until you. It's almost like people talk about tone, and you have to talk about it when you're talking to the studio about what is it going to be funny, is it going to be real? You talk about all this stuff, but honestly, as a filmmaker, you don't know what the tone is going to be until you make the movie and you see it, and then you can either then you get a feel for what works and what doesn't work, and you go for your best guess. But this one, I knew that we were going to have like comedy and also sort of more serious stuff, but it was really finding that becomes part of what what the editing is about. And I think ultimately every movie has its own tone, and if you try to do another movie's tone, then it doesn't feel original too.
I did go to Iceland.
Yeah, she
Oh, you
did.
did go to
Yeah,
Iceland. That's right.
Yeah.
Oh,
even though it was a fantasy, she actually came.
Yeah, the whole bar scene was there, and
I mean, I took Instagram. I actually joined Instagram while I was there, and then when I got back to New York, I quit. New York, right? But I was inspired to take pictures in Iceland because everywhere you turn, when you go to work in the morning, it's oh my God, this incredible sunrise. And, yeah, I mean, it's just incredible weather conditions there all the time. So that was actually really fun, and actually a couple of my Instagram pictures are in the end credits.
And also had access to the archives, the live photo archives, which were incredible and deep, and so many iconic images from my childhood, and seeing her in the flesh, and kind of holding contact sheets of Robert Capa D-Day photographs. It was pretty remarkable, and there's such a library of cover images that for us to choose from. It was really a challenge actually to curate the appropriate images that and determine when we were going to see them and how long they were going to be based on the blocking of how the blocking unfolded on the set that we created, and which images we wanted to have in the background for certain shots. And then when Walter makes the decision to go to Greenland, and he runs down the hallway and kind of articulating what those images were and how they kind of escalated, and that like these people that that had such an impact on our culture and you know, and our humanity that are on the covers of these things. And, you know, kind of Walter's like a little bit self-important and a little bit kind of fantastic, and but also kind of reverential at the same time in that one moment. So it was it was arduous because there were so many things. You know, it was like a wealth of riches. And then, of course, you know, certain things weren't good enough for us, so we had to create covers with specific images.
Really fun to look at all those covers, and I mean, just to look at Shirley MacLaine's with some 3 Life covers. At one point, we thought, oh, that'd be fun to put her on the wall. But I had an incredible stuntman. I did a lot, but Greg and I have been working together for like 10 years or something. But honestly, I did as much as I could do that I felt like I could actually do. So like we got in the water for real in Iceland. I didn't jump out of the actual helicopter. That was Greg. But we did get into real water in Iceland with a boat there, and it was definitely, I felt like I was doing something. And then we were up there doing a lot of those hiking shots, all that stuff up on the glaciers and stuff. And the skateboarding, I got on the skateboard too, and but then we had great skateboard doubles too, who did like the big serious stuff. But it was, it was incredibly exciting to be a part of that and to have the opportunity to do that stuff. And at one point, I had to do a shot in the water where the boat, there was a POV of the boat coming at me in the water, and so the camera was in the boat, so the boat had to go away to shoot the shot. So they dropped me in the water, and the boat went away. And I was just in the water in the North Sea, like with nobody around me, like 5-foot swells, and I had that moment like, okay, this is a movie, but this is also real life. And there really could be a shark there. And it was great. I thought it was one of those moments. I thought, I'd never in a million years have a chance to do something like this if I didn't have the opportunity to make this movie. So that was
A lot of rickety old doorless helicopter rides.
the helicopter stuff was all real.
That
Helicopter, Jeff found this 50-year-old helicopter that is actually it's the original Hawaii 5-0 helicopter. Dano wrote it.
literally the actual one
So,
of the first
that whole
series.
So, and the helicopter pilot kept saying, man, I wish this thing had more power. Not what you want to hear.
Underneath the helicopter.
Yeah, no, it was definitely like, but it all felt very real. And that, I think that all helps the actors. It helped me as an actor. It helped everybody feel like it was more, it's actually